Good evening and welcome to Z Renaissance News. I'm Cameron Adelberg.
And Olio Alami. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a special report, the Renaissance period. What was it like? Today we will take a special look.
The Renaissance took place in Europe. It was a time of intellectual advancement coming off of the Dark Ages, which was 600 years of cultural inactivity. The boundaries were the Arctic Ocean to the north, the Mediterranean to the south, Asia to the east, and the Atlantic Ocean to the west. It covered many of the European countries, the most notable being Italy, as it is where the Renaissance began. The north of Europe was mostly cool and wet, as opposed to the dry and sunny south. As a result, the south often traded with the north. The leaders of Italian city-states were usually oligarchies based upon families, as opposed to monarchies from the Middle Ages. The rule of law was sumptuary laws, which are defined as laws made for the purpose of keeping wealth restricted to the upper class, meaning that people were not equal under the law. The laws made it easy to identify social rank and privilege and could be used for social discrimination.
The men and women in the Renaissance have different expectations from different genders. It also depends on how you are marked on the social class tower. For example, if you are a peasant woman, you have to clean the house and take care of the kids, farm, and control the household. If you are a middle-class woman, you usually help your husband with his business. For example, the woman has to help in the shop or help find the materials to make the things that they are selling, or help make the things you are selling. You also have to take care of the kids, clean, and teach your kids, if they are boys, to become an apprentice. If you are a rich woman, you usually have slaves doing your work, shopping, taking care of the kids, but the wife is still expected to do at least a little bit of work.
Most of the Renaissance's activity, with artistic milestones and religious beliefs being put second to scientific fact, happened in Italy. Specifically, the most notable of the Italian states, Florence, Venice, Milan, and Rome. The leaders of these city-states were usually oligarchies based upon families, as opposed to monarchies of the Middle Ages. The most notable of these were the Florentine Medicis.
There were a lot of technological advances in the Renaissance. Some of the most important are the printing press, which allowed people to make multiple copies of the written word, such as books and newspapers. Other tech advances are the crank and connecting rods mechanism, which is the main part of engines. Other advancements that would have a major impact on human history are the mariner's compass and the parachute.
The music in the Renaissance is mostly polyphonic, meaning multiple voices or notes played in harmony. The invention of the printing press made it possible to mass-produce music sheets, creating a unified musical language throughout Europe. The food for peasants consisted of varied kinds of soups mostly. However, for the rich, they had an early form of pizza and pasta, sometimes with soups. The main religion of the Renaissance was Roman Catholicism. The people in the Renaissance generally wore many layers, as Europe isn't really the warmest place in the world. There was a distinction between country dances and court dances. Court dances required the dancers to be trained and were often for display and entertainment, whereas country dances could be attended by anyone. At court, the formal entertainment would often be followed by many hours of country dances which all present could join in.
The social classes were nobles, merchants, tradesmen, and unskilled workers. Your class was determined by your job, money, and if you had government power. Also, your class determined the food and fashion available. The language evolved from medieval Latin in the 14th century and developed into New Latin by the 16th century. The Renaissance also saw an artistic explosion when artists, now known as masters of their art forms, created work that are considered priceless today. The social classes went from king to peasants. The class of the nobles was the most respected class during the Renaissance period and owned most of the land. They were wealthy individuals who were highly respected and lived on large estates. The nobles owned big businesses and followed the basic rules of chivalry. The nobles included the military officers, politicians, and royal advisors.
The next class, or level, during the Renaissance years belonged to the merchants. The merchants were the newly rich people who gained wealth by working hard in the industries, and mainly worked in fields like wool, banking, and boat-making, etc. The merchants tried to marry into noble families to move up the ladder and became part of the nobles, though the nobles tried to maintain distance from the merchants due to this reason. The next class in the Renaissance days was the middle class. The middle class consisted of the shopkeepers and other professionals. The middle class was not a very wealthy class, but the wealth depended upon the hard work they put into their jobs. Sometimes the middle class people moved up the pyramid and became the merchants by doing well in their professions.
The fourth and the bottommost level belonged to the workers or the unskilled workers. These people were not specifically skilled and had no job protection. They took up any jobs and were dependent on their employers. Workers who violated any rules could be discharged from their jobs, and often their wages are withheld. The lower class among the workers belonged to the peasants who lived in rural areas and worked on small pieces of agricultural land to produce foods and other staples for the rest of the population. Starvation was common.
The goods Europe had consisted mostly of peppercorns, nutmeg, and cinnamon. The currency was the florin, which today would be worth around 140 US dollars. The imports were usually precious gems and silk, a fabric especially sought after for women's clothing.
As you can see, the legacy of the Renaissance period was a very important time in human history and set the stage for our modern society. Thank you, and see you next time.